Hey everyone, Matt Jarbo here with a quick update over the Mundane Cat GoFundMe. This is Chance. He is home from the hospital and he is doing much better. Everyone has been so generous so far. For that, I am eternally grateful. You guys have no idea. We're not quite done yet. 6,000 is the goal. We're almost there, and I just really hope you guys can help push it over. We are just over $4,200 in the GoFundMe, and we're almost there, but we need a little bit further of a push. If you can help, please go to gofundme.com/mundanecat. And thank you again from the bottom of my heart. You guys totally rock. Thanks. Hey, what's going on, everybody? My name is Matt Jarbo. This is the Mundane Matt channel. And you know, Black Lives Matter has been a thing now for a couple of years. And I talk about it pretty frequently because I'm critical of the organization because I'm not unsympathetic to their causes, but I find their actions to be horrifically stupid. Especially when it comes to something like this. Black Lives Matter shouts down ACLU. You protect Hitler too. Well, it's all in the context of how they'd protect Hitler. And, you know, like ACLU recently defended Milo Yiannopoulos based upon what happened with him and being ousted from Simon & Schuster when they, you know, ended his book deal. And other things that have happened with other people as well. The ACLU will come out in defense of free speech, in defense of the Constitution, in defense of First Amendment, in defense of these things that need to be done. And unfortunately, that doesn't always go over well with people. And apparently now they've got the ire of BLM, so you could pretty much tell where this whole thing is going. So it says here that a celebration of free speech at William and Mary College in Virginia took an unexpected turn last week when protesters from Black Lives Matter swarmed the stage and forced organizers to end the event. So basically they used, and you could say their free speech, to shut down other free speech, which could almost be described as fascism. But no one would surely ever claim that Black Lives Matter could become a fascist organization. that would just be logical. Anyway, liberalism is white supremacy, the protester shouted. The ACLU, you protect Hitler too. Okay, hold on, wait. Liberalism is white supremacy. You are liberal. By your own definition, you are a, you know... Oh my... Liberalism is white... Is this where we've gone now? Is this where we've gone? Liberalism is white supremacy. Everything is white supremacy. That's the problem. When you start labeling everything as one thing, that one thing then ceases to exist. It's the same argument many of us apply to feminism. When they start saying everything is sexist, everything is racist, everything is homophobic, it's all the patriarchy's fault. Everything's a patriarchy. Then nothing is the patriarchy. Because you can't do that. It doesn't work that way. It's one of the reasons why I got super mad at the Charlottesville protest when everyone's like labeling everyone there a Nazi. Like, no. There were differences. Race realists, white nationalists, white supremacists, and neo-Nazis, neo-Confederates, actual Confederates, the KKK. I mean, like, there were a vast majority of different groups that were there. And yes, maybe under like the same kind of like racist douchebag umbrella they were all under, but they all wanted... Most of them wanted different things overall. Like, you know, supremacists and nationalists want different things. You know, kind of under similar tenets, but different overall. And so it's like you have to then use the right word to describe them. Because if you lump everyone all together, then it just loses all meaning, right? The best case in point I can bring back to that, for those of you out there that may not get it, is go back to 2004's movie The Incredibles. Syndrome decides he wants to be a superhero, so then he goes and wants to take out all the other superheroes and then release all of his toys out to the market and allow anyone to be a superhero, because then when everyone's a superhero, no one is. And that's the whole idea there, is that once everyone is special, then no one's special. And this is kind of the same concept, just in a way you might be able to understand, is that if you start labeling everyone these particular things, even though they may not be 100%, it starts to delineate the term and diminish its impact, right? That's the problem with these blanket just call-outs. So calling liberalism white supremacy is one of the most asinine, idiotic things I've ever heard. Liberalism is not a bad thing. Conservatism is not a bad thing. The extremes on either side, yes, are bad, but those two in between are not. And having one side or the other allows for society to function through debate and open discourse. But shutting it down and then screaming at people that are on your side but maybe like, you know, not as left as you, so a little bit right, is considered white supremacy, really just doesn't make you look good in the eyes of anybody. But I'm pretty sure someone like, you know, like the Young Turks would defend this as saying, like, this is just progressivism. The disruption occurred before Claire Guthrie Gastanaga, executive director of the ACLU of Virginia, could give a planned speech on the freedom of expression. Funny, again, there's a level of irony here with the whole fact of being able to give you have an expressive movement before freedom of expression speech. It's kind of funny to me, but it's also really ridiculous. The protesters of course they did. They live streamed the demonstration on Facebook and were heard shouting other slogans, including, "The oppressed are not impressed. Blood on your hands. The revolution will not uphold the Constitution." Oh, wow. Again, liberalism is white supremacy. The revolution will not uphold the Constitution. I did make a joke about progressives. I'd like to retract that real quick, and let's just call it what it is, folks. It's communism. That's what this kind of stuff's boiling down to. The revolution will not uphold the Constitution. Look, Black Lives Matter. I'm telling you this. I'm telling you this from a 100% realistic stance. You don't want to go up against constitutionalists. You will lose every single time. You will lose every single time. And all you're doing is giving more fuel to the fire to the white separatists, okay, that, the nationalists and even the supremacists that both want that ethno-state. And you're giving them more fuel for that fire. This is not how you fight back on these issues. You're really only adding to the problem, which is funny because you're trying to solve a problem that does effectively exist, but can be discussed through an open discourse. But you're not allowing for discourse. Anyone who doesn't feed into your echo chamber has to be, excised immediately. I'm sorry. The revolution. Oh, god damn. Anyway, the ACLU earned the wrath of the protesters after they defended white supremacists' right to march in Charlottesville, Virginia in August. According to the campus's Flat Hat News, the march in Charlottesville quickly turned violent, leading to the death of one woman and injuries to many others. Now listen, all they did is they fought for the right to march. And as a person, like I said, myself, who very much champions free speech and freedom of expression, unfettered free speech, I agreed with the ACLU. I agreed with them. I don't agree with the views of the people that they were supporting, but I agree with their right to be able to do it. That does not make me a white supremacist. Those people are abhorrent, they're disgusting, and they have really crap ideas. But they have a right. Just like you have a right to also file a permit to get, to have a protest and go through the proper channels that way. Everything in Charlottesville was a mess from beginning until end. And there's no clear winner. There's no winner. Someone died. There's everyone was kind of a dick. Antifa and the alt-right and the white supremacists and all those guys, everyone was a jerk. And there were people in the middle that were caught, and that's the unfortunate thing. And Heather Heyer will never come back as a result of that. So it's just one of those situations that could have been stopped had people just let these guys have their protest, and then go on with their business. But instead, it escalated and things got out of control. And I'm not trying to say that it's all Antifa's fault or the counter-protesters. There were people from the white nationalist, white supremacist side that were going out of the park, and they were confronting people in the protest. They were looking to fight. Both sides are looking to fight. So that's why Trump said, and I agree with him here, there were many sides to this issue. But the media didn't want to focus at all on the other side. And it wasn't until later on, after Charlottesville, when they became lionized by the media, this being Antifa, and then Antifa showing up and beating on people and it being filmed, did the media then back down from that. But in that moment, they were lionized, and in that moment, people were really mad at Trump for what he said, even though what he said was objectively true. And that is where we are. Anyway, Gastanaga tried to point out to the disruption as an example of why she needs to talk about freedom of expression on university campuses, saying, "Good, I like this," as protesters raised their signs, as she would, because that's her entire point, freedom of expression. But then when they try to shout them down to shut it out or to cancel the event, that moves into basically kind of like, well, oppression and fascism. She goes on to say, "I'm going to talk to you about knowing your rights in protests and demonstrations," which this illustrates very well. Then I'm going to respond to questions from the moderators and then questions from the audience. But the protesters continue the disruption and barred anyone from approaching Gastanaga to speak. One organizer reportedly granted the demonstration's leader a chance to speak. And this is the problem with these kind of events, is when you're trying to talk about freedom of expression and free speech, on a private event in a private venue, and someone like this protest comes in, where do you draw the line for what is, polite versus what is not polite, and when it's time to shut it down? This is where people tend to fail. It's like they feel that if they give the protesters, or the counter protesters really, the chance to speak, that it will make them go away. It never does. It's always a case of, if you give them an inch, they take them out. Look at Bernie Sanders when he was in Seattle in June of 2015, when the two Black Lives Matter protesters took over his event, and he let them do it. And then when he let them do it, they never gave it back. He was going to be polite, but they never bothered to give anything back. And then it ended up canceling the event. And that's kind of basically what would happen here. But so this is what the protester said. When is the free speech of the oppressed protected? We know from personal experience that rights granted to wealthy, white, cis, male, straight bodies do not trickle down to marginalized groups. We face greater barriers and consequences for speaking. You don't face consequences for speaking. You face consequences for pulling this kind of crap, where you go and you shut down an event. This is how you lose public's favor, right? When BLM started, it very much had the public's favor because, oh yeah, no, we totally get it. Police brutality, totally fight back against that crap. And Ferguson was a mess from beginning to end. There was a whole bunch of negative news coverage because the police had essentially become militarized based on getting all of the excess gear from the war in Iraq through DoD grants and everything else. And that was, a very bad optics for the police, even though given what happened in Ferguson after that, it was like they should have just come in harder the next night and really just shut it all down, because of the outsiders coming in to loot and to riot. And every time since then, we've seen something like this that's always ended the same way. Police tend to back off, let people just kind of go through and destroy these neighborhoods, and they never get arrested. Although in Florida, though, there were all the kids who did rob that shoe store during the hurricane, and they were arrested. So I guess when it's a natural disaster, that's okay to arrest them, but when it's a protest, it's not. It's kind of a weird situation. Anyway, William and Mary College President Taylor Reveille said in a statement, saying silencing others was not acceptable in our community. Well, of course, afterwards, like, yeah, no, don't silence anyone. This stifles debate and prevents those who've come to hear a speaker, our students in particular, from asking questions, often hard questions, and from engaging in debate where the strength of ideas, not the power of shouting, is the currency. And that should be how every debate should happen. Look at what happened at Mythicist Milwaukee last weekend with Sargon of Akkad, and he was up there being just berated by the other guy on stage, Thomas, whatever his name is. And Sargon just, this is what I said. Here's why I said it. And that guy lost his complete, mind, and ended up just like leaving it early. Didn't really debate him. Didn't want to talk to him about it. Didn't want to hear his side. Just wanted to shout at him until where he got so frustrated at the audience not giving into it that he left. And that goes to show you the difference between people like Sargon of Akkad and people like, well, these protesters. Whereas, you don't give them the opportunity to get the upper hand in those moments because that's what they're looking for. They're looking for a photo op. They're looking for a news story. They're looking for good optics. And you can't give them that chance because, for one, it's not the appropriate time for that. There's no debate. It's just shouting people down, trying to shut down a group, trying to shut down an organization. And that's never going to end well for anybody. Going on to say here, William and Mary must be a campus that welcomes difficult conversations, honest debate, and civil dialogue, which is very true. Here's the thing here. I love this too, because going back to Charlottesville, ACLU enabled Heather Heyer's death. No, ACLU did not. That does fall back quite a bit to the Charlottesville Police Department for not containing the two, not keeping the two events together, or the two events separating, and for trying to migrate everyone together. There was a lot of mess on that day. And that's not the ACLU's fault. And that's why this kind of false equivalence is never going to get you anywhere in these situations. Like I'm saying, if Black Lives Matter wants to be taken seriously as it was 3 years ago, they've got to start reining this kind of stuff in. But their defense, and this is their defense, as we've known now from a judge ruling in Louisiana from a couple of weeks ago, they're not going to organize as like a national thing because that's what keeps them separate, but allowing each chapter, so to speak, to kind of act with impunity from one another. So while you can sit there and condemn the movement, or an individual chapter, I should say, you can't sit there and condemn the actual movement, even though we know for a fact that there was paid protesters in 2015 at a multitude of places around the country, to the point of where they started coming out saying, where's our paycheck? We know that they put on a lot of these demonstrations that were kind of, they bust people in, or I don't know how they got to flow them in. I'm not too sure how they got them there exactly, but I know that they were definitely paid to be there. And that definitely takes away from the impact of this community movement. If you need to pay people to show up to your rally, then your message is really kind of crap. And that also is backed up by this kind of action here. Black Lives Matter wants to shut down an ACLU event on the freedom of expression. There's a level of irony there that is utterly lost on them. Like, yes, you are expressing yourself, and yes, you have a constitutional right to do so, but you also have a constitution, people don't have to put up with it on a private event. I would have shut them down. I'd be like, call cops, get them out of here. And that's not me shutting down free speech. That's me shutting down speech that's not welcome in a place that I paid for. There's a difference between a private venue and a public space. And unfortunately, that becomes very blurred as time goes on. So hopefully these, the more mockery these type of actions get, and I don't care really what group you're associated with, when you act like this, you are made to look like a fool, and people then take you with less seriousness, and then that ultimately delineates your message, and then people just stop caring. I mean, pretty much like they already have with Black Lives Matter. Hey guys, that wraps up this video. If you'd like to leave a comment, please do so below. I love to read your guys' input. Be sure to hit that thumbs up button. It really does help me in the YouTube algorithm. If you want to support the channel, there's the Amazon affiliate store, there's PayPal, there's Patreon, there's Bitcoin. And if you're bored and you want something else to watch, check out 3 Buck Theater up here. My name is Matt Jarbo. I will talk to you guys later. Have yourself a wonderful day. Peace out.